Continuing on with part 2 of program design, the speed of exercise is referring to what we talked about earlier on the ACSM guidelines for 3 seconds down, 3 seconds up, or 3 seconds on the eccentric, 3 seconds on the concentric. Now that can vary depending on goals. If you have a person training for explosive power, they're still going to probably want to control that eccentric. There's still going to be maybe a 3-second count, but you might be doing more of a 1 to 2 second count on the concentric. If you got a person training on bench, they're not necessarily going to go 1, 2, 3. They might go 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1. I mean, because they're trying to get a lot of fast twitch recruitment on the bench press in that example. Breathing. We want to make sure we exhale on the concentric phase typically. We don't want to hold our breath. We call that the Valsalva maneuver that can spike your blood pressure up, and that's not a good idea. Exercise progression. We're going to flip to that. Exercise progression, you got to think about systematically, slowly but surely, looking at the frequency, the intensity, and the duration of the exercise program. Now when you talk about duration, that might be more to do with cardiovascular, because you might take just as long to do 3 sets of each major exercise the whole day, but increase the intensity in weight training. It's going to take about the same amount of time probably. As a matter of fact, it might take you longer at first because you're not in as good a shape, and you might actually need to rest longer between sets to get your air back. But they're talking about here, this would be more specific to cardio, to use the duration part increasing as you go. But week 1, for example, you might go 3 days a week, only a 40 to 50% intensity, and maybe go 15 to 20 minutes. We go down here to week 5 to 7 on the improvement stage. You go in 3 to 4 days, you're raising the intensity to 60 to 70% of your estimated heart rate max, and 25 to 30 minutes. And then you might get to a point where you're going 35 to 40 minutes. And obviously this is a general guideline, but if you notice the intensity goes from 40 on the low end as high as 85%. And so that's important to understand. You slowly but surely. And once again, week 24, I mean, you're looking at basically 6 months of a person taking that long to get to that point. Now obviously everyone's different. You might have a person that takes them 6 weeks to get where they can do that much. I mean, a person might you jump and do it pretty fast, but you need to take more of a conservative approach and get feedback from your clients. Rest between sets. Rest between sets has another asterisk here, so let's go to that. If you're trying to do more of fat loss, endurance, things like that, 12 to 15 reps might be more appropriate. You might only rest 20 to 30 seconds. Muscular endurance, 8 to 12 repetitions, 1 to 2 minutes between sets. Muscular strength, because we're talking about our anaerobic alactic creatine system. When you start getting into muscular strength and power, you notice the resting increases as they're lowering the reps. As they increase the power required, you're going to have your system needs to kind of reboot to get that kind of deal. So what I want to point out though on fat loss, it's not because you're doing 12 to 15, because you could absolutely lose fat doing 4 to 8 reps or 8 to 12 reps. It's just that if your main purpose is that, you're probably not necessarily going to be doing max out type of training. You're going to be doing more fast paced, almost like an aerobic type training, maybe a circuit type training, and that would be more appropriate to that. But I don't want you to misunderstand that you have to switch over to that if you're trying to get leaner, lower body fat, because that's not really the purpose of that statement, because that's more about cardiovascular training, obviously a hypocaloric diet state as well. Rest between workouts, we talked about that earlier. Based on the muscle worked, you might have to rest maybe 2 to 3 days between each workout of that specific muscle. So like if you did your legs on Monday, you can do your upper body on Tuesday. You just wouldn't want to do your legs again on Tuesday. You can work out with weights 2 days in a row. You can work out weight 3 days in a row as long as they're not the same muscles. You might do pushing for your upper body on one day, pulling for the next day, legs the next day, and then start the cycle over, depending on how you're doing your routine, which is obviously what that means. The cool down phase of program design, you need to think about specifically more about cardio. You're trying to get your heart rate acclimated, your breathing acclimated. You need to take an appropriate cool down. Flexibility is part of total fitness, a part of total wellness. We want to make sure our muscles are flexible. The best time to stretch aggressively is going to be when your muscles are warm at the end of the workout. You can stretch while you're working out. Generally not a good idea to overly stretch too much, at least if you're trying to progress beyond what you're normally capable of prior to the workout when you are cold. You need to make sure you're monitoring the program as well. Resistance and repetitions is more about, it's kind of a chart for you to refer to regarding, one rep maxes up to 15 and what percentage of your perceived effort you're going to be going over.